Hi, it's a video about a big piece. I just took a commission for a 25-inch piece finished, 25 inches high, which is 62.5 centimeters finished height, which means I have to make it 72.5 inches at the beginning, I guess, before it dries. All right, so wish me luck. I got a 25-pound ball of clay and a 20-pound ball of clay. This is a beginner's video. Just kidding. Now, let's get this go on the road. Whoa, okay. I got two cameras, so you should be able to see what I'm doing. The most important thing is you've got to be able to center the clay. So let's get this ball on the road. It's an entire bag of clay, obviously. Oh. There we go. So it is important to make this thing as easy as it is possible to center it. And this clay is not new, so it's a little stiff, but that's a good thing as long as I can center it. Okay, so my elbow is too close, so I'm going to move my wheel away. I've got to be able to get my elbow in there. That looks about good, because I'm going to need some assist from this wall that you've seen me in the past. Have I have power? Yes, I have power. All right, so it's sealed to the wheel because I just hammered it a bit. So I'm going to just try to stop it wobbling as much as I can with the first little. You've got to basically torque it into being in center. It is going to fight back, especially since this is slightly stiff clay. So we've got that there. So I'm going to try and do a little bit of a cone, come up a little bit. The clay is brand new, so I'm pretty sure it doesn't have any air bubbles, but on a piece this big, you're never going to know till you find it. Okay, so there you go. We got a cone. Okay, that's enough for me to sit on top of it, right? Maybe I'm not joking, just have to sit on my hands on top of it. Push you back a touch. There we go. There's my sponge. It's gonna take a lot of water. Okay, so let's see if I can get myself up in on top. I mean standing up, leaning on my arms. Now I don't want to fold over a mushroom in this either. This whole exercise is just to even the clay out, make sure it is good. My hands are not big enough to cover the clay, which is what I usually tell people to do when you're centering. Try and put your hands in position so that you're really just encompassing the entire ball of clay, even though I usually let people see that I'm centering with half the clay visible. But that's actually pretty good, and that made it easier to cone it up. So let's flatten this down at the top. Oop. I've got to get my hand down there. So I'm going to put a little dimple. Now it's a big dimple. Your hand dries out so fast. Because you're putting so much pressure on. So now I'm going to try and get my sponge in there too. Not not sure how I'm going to do this. I don't want to leave finger. So the sponge helps soften my finger points. Can you get a good view from upstairs? There you go. What do we got? Oh, I still got another couple of inches to go down there. Go down just another centimetre, I would say there. Don't want to go too thin. This is an umbrella stand when it's finished. So I want to make sure I don't make the base too thin. Otherwise Jeeves will just walk in and throw his umbrella in there and you'll hear a crack. I always tell people I've made these before, and you basically put a big foam cushion in the bottom of your umbrella stand. Now we're going to do the trick. If you've got a big piece of clay and you do not know how thick it is, you dry it out, you put this in, needle, put the needle in, and feel how thick it is by pushing your finger down to where it goes into the clay and lifting it out. So we have about, that's close to an inch, I think, but not too much because this is a tall piece, not a... Now we're going to knuckle through. The two forms that I'm going to join together should both be about 15 inches high. And at the moment I think we've got about 7, maybe 8. And she wants it to be wider at the bottom than the piece she saw in my showroom. It's drying up on the inside, so I let go quickly there. Kept my hand on the inside. Get some water in there. Now I want to leave a thick piece at the top. It's got to get a lot taller yet anyway, but I'm going to put a gully in there to rest the other piece inside. So I'm going to thicken up that edge, even though I lost a little bit of height by thickening it like that. So I'd say probably 10 inches, 9-10 inches high now. Wet it all the way. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to try doing a pull. I'm going to get it wider on the inside. I'm going to do a pull. So I'm chasing after the wet above my fingers. My apron's drying the piece out as I'm pulling up. Most of the clay now is still at the bottom, and I'm not going to thin here, remember I've got to make a gully up there. So I would say we're over a foot high now. And there's still a lot of thickness at the bottom, so I'm going to keep the speed as it is. Wet it thoroughly again. Get my sponge wet again. push out a bit more on the inside. Make the bottom wider on the inside, remember. Now I'm going to start the pour. It gets to the point your hands, if you can see that I get a little tremble sometimes because I'm putting so much pressure on. And it's because the clay, even if it has a tiniest bit of dryness to it, will catch on your hand a little bit. So you've got to make sure it stays wet. Now I'm not putting in much pressure. I've reduced the pressure because we don't want to do anything there yet. Okay, so at this point I'm going to wet it with a sponge going all the way down. Instead of dribbling water into the piece, I'm just wetting it. That'll lubricate it all the way down. Dragging the sponge. Oops, it's very wet still, as you can see. Same here. And now I think I'm going to use my fingertips instead of my knuckles. Fingertips are a bit more sensitive than the knuckles. But at this point I'm not really looking for thinning. I'm just going to see if I can get a bit more height, and then it's about widening it. Was that ruler? See what we did there. I gained another 1.5 inches. I would think we're up to 16 inches high there. The next one only has to be 14, you see. So I'm guessing 5-inch shrinkage rate in this piece if I can get a 30-inch stall. Okay, well now, there's my wooden rib. I'm going to try to see what I've got on the inside. I might use that curve of the rib to smooth out the inside a bit there. And now I'm going to use a sponge to smooth the bottom. I won't need water for the rest of the throwing. See how hard I'm trying not to get clay on the inside of my sleeve? It is such a yucky feeling. we have that tropical storm Henri coming. Well, it's not a storm anymore, it's just a depression at this point. But Henri is visiting us today, so it's very cloudy and nasty outside. It's just going to be a couple of inches of rain for us during the day. Let's get you back again. All right, so I basically know I'm going to lose a little bit of height potentially. But I'm going to try to open up and get a bit more width. My wooden rib is angled so that it's pushing it up as well as out. So I can hopefully compensate the height loss with the actual clay being forced a bit taller. Because every time you widen it, you lose a bit of height. The rib is trying to stick to the clay a little bit, so I've got to be careful. Oop, there you see how it's stuck then. I'm going to react really quick if that happens, like there. And I'm going to have to clean my rib. I was hoping to get to the top, because there's so much clay on there that it was starting to catch. Let's go again from here. The bottom I think is fine. Okay, let's have a look at it. Pretty good cylinder, eh? Not cylinder because it widens, of course, but that's pretty well in center still. I think I need a touch more belly though. The lady doesn't want it to be as bellied as the one in my gallery, but she wants a little bit of a belly. I think I'm going to swap to my metal rib, even though it's harder to hold, where it doesn't catch the clay as much. Now my fingertips are right opposite the metal rib, with one finger to the left and one to the right of the metal rib. So I haven't made it too thin, which is a danger. A big piece like this sitting on the floor inside somebody's front door, people are going to throw their umbrella into it. You can just see Jeeves running in before trying to stop them doing it, but so I think we've got a decent curve out of this now without being too big. Okay, so now I'm at the point where It's about looking just with a fraction of like a millimeter will make a difference, because that I don't want it to have a concave feel there. I'm so glad I didn't make it too thin at that point. It's going to have to take a lot of weight when I dump the other piece on top. Let's have a little look. That's good. Okay, so how do we make the next piece easy to put on? Okay, so hold your wooden rib. You don't need to use water for this, and flatten down the edge. Okay, without gripping too much, you don't want to risk it snapping to your fingers. So you've got a flat edge, it's still straight going down, and then using the point, making sure you don't drop the tool at this point. And then I'm going to find the center. And there's my little groove that will be where the other piece will fit right inside. And then I have a flap on the inside and the outside where I can actually, what do I do with my sponge? There it is. The flap is going to be folded over the top of the rim of the next piece. I don't need to clean this up because it's actually going to be folded in and there's going to be a real mess made of it anyway. But let's get all the clay off. It'd be kind of nice to know the height, wouldn't it? Did we lose anything stopping it? No, we didn't. I would say that's 12 to there. We've got a good 3 to 4 inches more. Let's see if I can mark that, because the ruler's got a good ½ centimeter to 1 centimeter at either end before it starts measuring. So let's see if I can get the clay off here. I just made a mess of the ruler so I can't read it. 8. Okay, there's 4. So we got there. Oh, it's exactly 4. So this is 16 inches height. So I need to make the other one 14 inches height. All right, so let's get this little guy off. Okay, that's it. They fit exactly. So this piece now has to sit, and let's pretend it's dry out there. Normally I would join this together the next day early in the morning, just leave them out overnight in my damp cupboard so they're not too dry. And then I may have to heat this area at the bottom a little bit to make it a bit stronger. And I will have to flip this upside down onto the other, which you'll see in the next part of the video. Overnight, these pieces have shrunk at different rates, and they were stored right next to each other in the damp cupboard. So then they're still very soft. I can't put them together yet, but the top of this one, if you can see, it has curved in, and through experience I've known that all along. The pots seem to shrink a little bit, and I don't know why. This is thinner than this one at the top, but anyway, this one has actually curled in a little bit, and I kind of anticipated that, but still I measured the other one again this morning, and this one, if you look at that, it's got to be pushed out only about 1/4 of an inch, but that's a big difference when you think about the two shrinking at the same time. So all I've got to do, let's turn it on, is I've got two wheels next to each other here, just to get it going slowly, is just pull it out a touch. Let's have a look again. It's closer, but still didn't go far enough. So I'm just going to pull from about 2 inches down below. More pushing with my inner finger. And this is all going to be rethrown when it's actually on top of the other piece. Perfect. Alright, so that's all I have to do at this point. Okay, I have two big pieces to put together here. So I have scratched and scored the gully in this piece, wet it, scratched and scored, so it is actually movable and a bit sticky and tacky where I've added the water as well. I have basically let this dry all day and this one dry all day, but I've now just wet down the top of this one as well, so it's just scratched and scored and wet down a little bit, but it is still smudgeable with your finger and all that. So I've got a heat gun for paint stripping right there set up, just in case I feel like the thing starts to collapse a little bit, because this is quite precarious. So this you have to be quite brave to do. This piece weighs about 18 to 20 pounds, I can't remember. I cut off a section of it, but let me just, so I'm holding it up, and I've got to, without bending it, turn it upside down and place it on top of this guy. And this is where you have to let go and say, I hope it worked. It looks good. I think possibly it could have come this way a tiny bit. I don't know if I could do that at this point. It's probably stuck already because the weight is so great. This is where my little harp comes in very handy. It's not collapsing. I'm not seeing any bulge. And then lift quick. Because now you've got another 18-20 pounds on top of this piece of clay down here. And this is still, you can take it right off with your finger, it smudges. So it's very soft still. But at this point, what I do is I start tacking every 6 inches or so. I don't want it to be moved at all. And then once I've gone all the way around with my tack marks, then I come up with my finger and smudge in And let's see, that looks pretty good. I'm quite happy with that. I don't think I need my heat gun. I had it as my emergency backup here. Not that it, you know, I don't use a torch, like a propane torch, because I'm convinced that they give off a little oily residue on the surface that they're burning, and I've got to cover this in slip, black slip, to do the carving, and I don't want anything on the surface of the clay that could resist the slip. So that's why I don't do, and this is where you might lose me. I better go off the top of the camera. Okay, so I've got to now do the same on the inside. I don't need to tack because I've already joined it all the way around the outside. So what do we have here? We had a 16 plus inch height piece, I think, and we've got a 14, 15 inch piece. So this piece, I'll have to measure it, but I think it's 30 inches high. So my fingers are right opposite each other. I don't want to basically push from the inside and not have pressure on the outside. Plus it helps to join the clay if you've got pressure from both sides, but also I don't want to bend the piece out from the inside because this join area is really good. Okay, I've been all the way around now, so I'm going to go a second time. Because I think, like, the cut, measure it twice and cut once. If I do everything twice, then I know I've got it. Now I'm just supporting on the inside while I do this join. Try and get it as invisible as possible. Okay. Oops. Taking a look in the inside to make sure. I'm going to put my hand there. Now I'm moving my hand horizontally. Instead of pushing it up and down, I'm just moving horizontally to kind of brush away any bumps. And what I tend to do with these pieces is when it's a lot firmer, I will put a trimming tool on the inside where the join area is and actually trim some of that area off. Because it's got a thick area right in the center there. Okay, so let's have a look. I don't have any bulges at the bottom, so it's supporting the weight easily. And this was thrown this time yesterday, so it firmed up enough in that period. But it's very humid too at the moment. So this is going to be an umbrella stand. So let's see. So I'm not going to risk it now. I need this area down here to firm up, and then this area to stay soft. So I'll cover this with a plastic bag down just past the join area, and then I'm going to let it firm up on the underside overnight again, and then tomorrow I'm going to throw this area up here and form a sort of a neck area. It doesn't have to be narrowed, it has to stay wide. Okay, what I have to do now is actually straighten the form up a little bit. It's firmed up on the bottom, left unwrapped all night. but it's so humid at the moment, nothing much dried. This is still really sticky. So, but anyway, I'm just going to try and straighten this area here and sort of continue this curve up a bit more even. That's a nice curve, but then it gets to here and then it's a bit less likely to be, you know, I've got to do something with it. So let's get this going fairly slow. Have I not got any power yet? There we go. Yeah, the bottom looks good. The top, like I thought when I attached them, has a tiny little bit of a off a little bit there, but not much. So it should be salvageable. So I have to stand on a chair to do this. But literally, I'm just going to try and scrape that clean so the join disappears. The piece can catch your upper arm too. With nothing to lean against, you're really relying on your body's bulk to stop you moving around too much. And your back will hurt after a while. The piece is actually firmer than I was expecting. Get rid of that. It's a lot of clay to be carrying around on your trimming tool. So I'm trying to open up the top up here. Because there's an umbrella stand, you want to be able to get more than one umbrella in there. wet it a little bit because I'm catching a little bit of clay. The top has got a lot of weight just here, which means I've got more to work with. So I'm just going to try throwing this little top up a little higher. Well, I don't want to go much higher because this thing is already taller than I was supposed to make it. But it's going to shrink. And I want the top edge to be thick because I don't want somebody to hit this thing and crack it with a metal pointed umbrella. And then my baby seagull again, what a noise. I wonder what happens to these guys because they obviously, mum's decided that they're big enough to eat and catch what they would need themselves. In the summer months, there's a lot of tourists around who throw bread scraps and stuff out for seagulls. The bakery's right next door, so they get used to it. I saw a seagull once flying away with a great big baguette in its mouth. Whether he stole it or whether he was given it, I don't know. But he was flying with a baguette in his mouth. I hope he shared it. I feel like I've got to go out a little bit further just at that point. But I can't reach much further than this. Let's have a look again. That wobble is a little bit in this area here, but I think I can trim that out. I think at this point I'm going to try scraping from the outside. I've been widening it because I want a big opening at the top, and it's basically, she didn't want a big belly on it, she wanted more of a cylindrical piece. So we're close. So now I'm going to do that thing that you've seen me do on my casseroles and just give myself a really definite kind of shoulder area here, and try and touch my fingers together as well. It gives me some unity in my hands form. So that little bump there, that's just what I'm trying to get. And then I'm going to go in here and try and flare out again. There's a little bump of clay in the very top. Am I off the top? No, I'm not off the top. And the top here, there's a little bump of clay that was catching when I'm just squeezing it in. Now I'm going to thicken up that top edge. That should be rounded enough so we won't have to worry about somebody catching the point with it. You know, come to dinner and you've got your big black suit on and you're dressed up to the nines basically, and you run in, everybody's happy and everybody's wonderfully sort of joyous, and you don't even think, but you throw your umbrella right into the pot. And fortunately, the potter has thought about that and rounded off the edge so it doesn't have anything sharp to catch. And inside the pot is this great big thick 6-inch piece of foam. So the umbrella just goes sinks into the foam. And we all live joyously ever after. Alright, so what I've got is a nice, reasonable form that doesn't have too much of a belly, because that's not what I was asked to do. Just going to try and knock away any bumps. It's hard there because that's where the join was. Yep, somebody's in the gallery, but I just heard the door. My wife just went to the gallery. Okay. All right, now I'm starting the carving. I'm going to start with the base, which is only about 3 inches high anyway, but it's getting pretty dry. So let me give you a little look at this, see if you can get close. There's no, I don't think this iPad actually does like an in-lock, you can't expand when you're videotaping, which I've always found irritating, but there you go. So I've been doing this for a while, but it literally is, let's get a light. The clay is now what I call just past leather hard, because I've been carving this for an hour and a half already. And all I got to do is use the little tool to scrape away the black, which I've already pre-drew the actual design, which is just seaweed basically. And you just kind of pull the tool, which this tool, I can't remember what it was, who I got it from. I've covered it in tape to make it easier to hold, because a lot of the trouble that I've had over the years with my hands has always been carpal tunnel related, and by thickening your tools you can get rid of that pressure that you put on your fingers that puts stress on your wrist. So just thicken up your tools with some duct tape or rubber bands. And then you just kind of glide the tool through with a little bit of pressure. The best time is just about leather hard, just to this point, which the clay does not stick at all to the actual tool or the surface of the pot. It just falls away. And if you get it any drier than this, it becomes dusty, so you don't want to do it then either, because this is actually still got some moisture in it, so it prevents it from forming an instant dust. Although I've got to be very careful with the trimmings all the way around here because it's very dry. I actually thought about installing a vacuum system, but the noise was going to be just too much to have that running. I'm just carving on the surface right at the corner too, just over the top a little bit, so the carving looks like it's going under the whole piece when it sits on here. Temperature dropped a lot. Last week it's been so hot and humid, but last night we had a highish winds, and then the wind changed to the northwest, from the northwest, and now it's cool. I mean, it was down to about 10-12 degrees last night, centigrade, so that's about 50 Fahrenheit, I guess. That's a taste of fall, I guess. This is actually the last weekend of our, what we think of as the summer tourist trade. They'll be now entering into the late summer fall period, where we still get a lot of business. But it is interesting that summer always goes so fast. But actually the best time of the year is coming up. So I'm just resting my hand on my other hand just to give myself a little steadying. The nice thing about this is too, if you make a mistake, you just get some black slip, and I have a black slip underglaze mix 50-50 that I actually will paint in any mistakes. So it's not crucial if you do something, you can just paint it right back in. The underglaze 50-50 with the slip just makes it bind with the actual clay a little easier. Sort of melts together, I guess. And it also makes my, when I do these, I mix the 50-50 anyway. It's a blacker slip than just straightforward black slip. I use 6600 black from Mason Stain for the black, and then use LUG 1, I think it is, or it could be LUG 10, I can never remember which is which. One's white, one's black, and that's the actual underglaze. So I've got to make this huge piece. I'll show you later in the video. You've seen me making it. And it's going to be carved, and my arms are going to be falling off by the time I've done it. So what I do is I actually sit it on the floor and start carving from the top down. So I'm always like this, basically. I build a rest so I can actually rest on something. Getting very complicated in this little area here. So I'm always leaning on something as I'm carving. Because that's bad for your shoulders to be holding them up that long. It's funny, it chilled down last night, as I said, and my cat has been sleeping on the floor, just on a wooden floor, because it's the coolest area since I'm right above the water. We're on stilts above the water, basically. And so they like the floor, the hard floor in the summer months. But it only took it going down to 10 degrees last night, and my cat's already sleeping on Polartec again. I tried to make wavy lines rather than straight lines when I do these to give it some energy. Yeah, it's getting so dry at this point that it's almost at the point where it would start flaking. So I'm going to be timing this perfectly because it's almost dry and I'm almost finished. That's the hardest part, but you can cover things in plastic obviously if you're working, which is what I'll do with the big piece. I'll have a big plastic bag over it covering up the bottom and I'll just uncover it as I carve, which will have to be done over 2 to 3 days because it really is going to take a long time anyway. All right, so if you can see that, this is what that big pot is going to sit on. There's a little bit more to do, like here I usually kind of do a little bit of detail stuff just in there where it needs it. Mostly that's it. All right. Okay, I started to carve the piece. This is the large whale umbrella stand that I've been doing. And the piece is still too soft. I just thought I'd give it a go to see how. But the little slivers are somewhat sticking to the piece, so it tells me I've still got to give it. And it's been drying for a week, covered in plastic, so it doesn't actually crack or anything, so, which I don't think it would anyway, but I like to dry things super slow. So all I'm doing is carving a little black layer off creating a wave effect. And I'm drawing whales on the piece too, so you're not sure if you can see them from that angle. It's so dark in here even with my lights because it is stormy out. That Ida is still going. I've been doing this video at the same time as the lamp one, and so I recorded a little bit of the lamp one today, but Ida is blowing up a storm out there. So this tool is a very old tool that I have that I love, and I just keep repairing it. And I'm just doing wavy lines. Okay, I've been drawing out the actual whales on this piece. It's already got a lot of hours in it. And I basically draw on a piece of paper the shape of the whale, then place the paper on the piece, and just repress with a biro, a ballpoint pen, through the paper onto the clay so it makes an indent. And then I use a sgraffito tool to outline all the shapes so that I can then carve the ocean waves and the ripple effect of the water. So this part is quite repetitive. It's just the same as tracing, basically. So you have to draw your shapes. And give it a little bit of movement by your positioning. You can hear the wind. It's still windy. This is 2 days after Ida passed through here. And we're still getting some wind, residual wind from Ida, I guess. It must be way up past Newfoundland by now. So the clay is perfect at this point because I can carve easily without actually sticking to the surface. So the bits that I carve out just fall. Right to the floor. Big vacuuming job at the end. I'm firing my gas kiln outside, and I changed my target brick in the gas kiln so that because the top reached so much later than the bottom in the last firing, so this time I blocked up part of where the hole of the gas gets through past my target brick to the bottom, because I think I'm letting too much of the heat down to the bottom straight away. So this time I'm firing it, and I just noticed that the cone 4 is down on the top and not on the bottom. So did I block up too much? We'll find out. But every kiln you pack is different anyway. This has got some larger pieces in it. That's why gas kilns are a little bit like babysitting. So every 15 minutes I go out and check. And it's this close to temperature because we've only got 2 more cones to go down. Mirandy's the perfect studio cat. He knows his name. Did you see he moved his head there when I said Mirandy? He's very old. He's 15. He's in pretty good shape. He's in better shape than my other cat. My other cat I found in a toxic waste dump. So she's always had bad lungs. She sneezes a lot. Boy, it's windy out there now. It's supposed to go down in New Brunswick tonight. They're saying frost warnings. Well, it's only September 4th. That won't happen around here, of course, for another month. Cat needs attention. Hi, Mirandy. So this is pretty much what I've been doing, and after this I'll start the carving of the water, so I'll let you go for a minute. The next step in carving is to actually add the water effect. So I'm using a loop tool and sort of a wavy, not precise. I'm trying to take away more black than I leave. And kind of wobbling up and down. Sometimes I'll go and remove a little piece of black that was a bit too much, basically. But this part here really makes your arm hurt. I've actually got a clay bag that I rest my arm on if it gets too tired. to sit there, but I have to stack up the bags of clay to kind of get the right height. So I try not to do that because it really can hinder you too. The wind has calmed down now. This is about 2 hours later than I filmed earlier. Still use the word film, don't we? It's just recording these days. Interesting how much this piece shrinks when I actually finish. It was 36 inches when I started it. If I remember right, that is. My gas kiln is definitely being adjusted too much because it's taking longer to heat the bottom up this time. So what I'll do is I'll take those pieces of brick that I've added in there and remove them for the next firing and try something different. It's a very even kiln, but that one last firing is definitely different. And you can adjust by just packing lighter. I would have expected the top to reach before the bottom, and in this case, it's the top is getting hot before the bottom, but it's just too far apart. I think it's more than a cone difference. And when I've actually done this, I may actually come back in with a bigger tool and knock out some areas to stop it being quite as predictably kind of parallel lines, almost in a wavy pattern. That's why I try not to. I sort of go up above every so often just to knock out that kind of evenness. Anyway, I'll turn it back on in a while. Okay, the carving is done. So basically, I use that word again. This piece took, it's been carved over 3 days, but I don't remember exactly how many hours, but as it dried out, I carved other areas, and so worked from the top down to the bottom, and last night about 6:30 I finished it, and today I came in and felt like it wasn't finished, so I've just been carving a little bit more detail in it. So it's basically just a you know, just, I would say past leather hard now, but it's going to take at least a week of just sitting around before I feel like comfortable enough to put this in the kiln. I'll give you a close-up of it. So there's the surface. And my cat kept me company the whole time. I just brushed him because he's losing a lot of fur at the moment for some reason. I just started firing my kiln in the building, so it was warm last night, maybe that's why. Now I'm going to clean the studio.